I've got this big birthday wishes die from My Favorite Things, and it covers an entire card front. So with this and using some specialty paper or some creative design, you can actually create a really impactful card. Now, what I have figured out is instead of doing paper piecing from one pass through the die cutting machine, I can actually create two really cool looking cards. I'm going to use these two specialty papers along with this die and a standard rectangle die. Let's jump straight into this. I actually tape these together so that the big birthday wishes is centered. And then when I run them through, I get this. So it's now just a matter of pushing out all of the letters and making sure I don't lose any of the pieces. Then I'm going to actually put the specialty paper behind the outline. And then any of the letters that have little pieces in the middle, I need to attach to the teal paper. So I'm doing the letter B at the moment, and I've put the B in so that I can make sure those inner pieces are then the exact right spot. In the word birthday, there's then lots of little fiddly pieces. And so I'm keeping the piece inside the letter and putting a tiny piece of glue on the back. And then when I slot it in like you would if you were doing some paper piecing, that's going to attach to the teal paper at the back. I just let it dry for a little bit, and then I need to really carefully peel up the craft letters. This part needs to be done really, really carefully because if you pull off the little pieces in the middle, it's really quite hard to get them aligned. So I'm very strategically holding my nail on top of the piece I want to stay behind and then gently peeling up the piece. You can see here, I think there's about 4 letters that have something in the middle. So there's quite a few of them in the word birthday. And you need to be really careful not to damage the letter because we're going to use that for the other card in just a moment. Okay, so phase 1 is now complete and we need to put that aside because we're going to come back to that later. We need to use this outline to paper piece all of the letters in on the navy piece of paper. I generally do this in sections, so I'm doing the big first, and this one's pretty straightforward because the letters just slot right in. I put quite a bit of liquid glue, but you don't want to put too much because you really need to be able to peel up the outline and not have anything rip or tear. So I'm being very, very careful when I'm doing the smaller letters, and I'm just touching the tip of my liquid glue, and I'm using the very fine precision point on my Barely Art glue, and I'm putting such a small amount. It's enough to make the letters stick, but I'm being really careful not to nudge the side. When I'm putting this together, I worked out that the S goes a particular way. And so when I was making these cards, sometimes I would get it upside down and have to spin it. But for the most part, this is all pretty straightforward. Is paper piecing something you enjoy doing when you're making cards? I really love it. I find it very therapeutic, but because I love to create a volume of cards, I really enjoy this method because I get to do the paper piecing, but I end up with 2 cards every time I go through the die cutting machine, and each of the 2 ends up with a slightly different look. Okay, so I'm nearly finished here, just finishing off the last few letters. And once these have had a chance to dry, I'm going to do the same thing that I needed to do before for the previous step. And that is really, really carefully peel off the outline. Again, I need to be really careful not to damage any of the pieces because I need every single piece to make up the 2 cards. So I'm undoing the tape on the side, and I have to say that the reveal part is kind of fun. It's almost like when you do masking and you peel something back and it's just so satisfying with what it looks like. So I'm holding the letters and really gently peeling this up. It came out quite well, which means that I really was careful enough with my glue, which is great to know. And I'm now back to card number 1, and this is the one that has all those little bits already attached to the teal. So I've lined it up, and now I'm going to use some double-sided tape to attach the teal to that front panel. You can do this any way you like. The teal pieces that I had were from another project, and they were only just big enough to cover behind the cover plate die. And so by putting this double-sided tape, it attached it quite well, and none of it was visible through those letters. You'll also notice that the teal it's actually a really heavy teal vellum. And so when I put it with white behind it, it really makes the teal pop. With the black behind while I'm working on the project, it doesn't look quite as bright. But as soon as it's on the white, it's going to look amazing. The other thing as well is I didn't really think this through, and I didn't put any glue anywhere onto the front panel. So I'm just using the precision nib, thank goodness for this glue, to find some strategic places to just add a little bit of liquid glue so that front panel doesn't peel up. When I made the rest of the cards, I actually put some little pieces of glue before I put the paper behind, and that worked way, way better. Either way works, but this is a little bit fiddly, so I would avoid it if you were going to create a similar project. Okay, so now card number 2 just needs to be added to a white card base. So I'm going to remove all the tape that I used to hold that down and just use my ATG. I'm putting it as close to the edge as I can because I want that to be really, really well stuck right up to the edge of the card. And you don't want any edges that are kind of peeling up and looking sloppy. And then I'm getting ready to attach this one to a white card base, and I learned my lesson. So I am putting a little touch of liquid glue in the areas where you can't see through the letters. I'm using standard A2 white card bases, so they're 5.5 by 4.25. I have a lot of these already in my stash and I pre-fold them. So if I'm doing a bulk project, it's just a matter of grabbing some and using them. I don't have to cut them and fold them each time I want to work on a project, which is really handy. I know not everybody does as many cards as I do in one go, and you can certainly just use this technique to create 2 cards. So just one pass through and create 2. Now that I've attached this, you can already see how much brighter the teal is. It is such pretty vellum. I have no idea where I got it from. I think it was from a friend who was doing some invitations many years ago, and they knew that I was a card maker. So they gave me all of the leftovers, and it's been sitting on my shelf amongst a whole bunch of specialty paper for a long time. And it was just an odd width, and it worked out perfectly for this. I'm now working on card number 2, and this is the one that has a shimmer navy paper that you'll see when I zoom in a moment, but I also used a texture plate to add a little bit more interest. I can't remember exactly which one. It might be the wind texture plate. Oh, so there's card number 1, which is awesome. I love it. And then here is card number 2, and you can see that waves or that wind texture plate in the background. These are fantastic and so simple to make. So I did go through a ton of my scraps and just start running it through my die cutting machine like crazy. And you can see none of these really kind of match each other particularly well, but I actually enjoy just creating with my leftovers and then trying to figure out a way to make the colors work and challenge myself a little bit. So I'm going to sort through all of these and create some little piles. And then because I can put a different pattern paper behind, it means I can really match it up with anything that I like. And I really do try and use a kind of boring piece of paper and then something specialty. So something that's got a shimmer to it or just some kind of interest that will really make the other paper look a bit more special. I also tried another technique of putting 3 different papers between each line of the sentiment, and it got so complicated that I just completely gave up. I'm going to put another video here that I think you might enjoy. Have a great day.